Hey guys, welcome to another edition, another installment, another episode of Total Male Introspective, the TMI podcast. I'm Joe.
I'm GC.
What's up, Jonesy here?
And we've got our guest Tom standing by. Thanks for coming by, Tom.
Hello.
This is episode 115, if I am not mistaken. Jonesy, correct me if I'm wrong. 115.
That's the
Just
one.
a couple quick shout outs. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, what's up? You guys probably having a great day.
I don't know.
At least one of them is having a great day.
I don't know if either of them are having a great day at this point. So we're going to get into some voting stuff real quick. We go live usually Tuesday nights at 9. We decided to hold off this Tuesday because we didn't think any of you guys were going to be tuning into us, given what was going down. So here we are. We're going to cover the election, the joy of American elections, as named by Jonesy. And make sure you guys check us out every Tuesday. Join the discussion. If you want to jump in here at any point, let us know in the chat. We might be able to get you guys in. Make sure you have headphones on so we don't get the bleed through. And I'll let Jonesy start us off here. Jonesy, get at it.
All right. So this week, on this past Tuesday, we had a general election for the United States to pick our president and a bunch of other different senates and local elections and Congress and everyone. So we have a big problem, though, because we still don't know who that person is. And what we'd like to do today is kind of go over what does our presidential election kind of look like? What is it supposed to look like? And what really is going on right now this week, the past couple of days, and kind of break this down and decipher, what we need, what is going on this week. So first, I'm just going to kind of take over a bit and just kind of talk about what does a presidential election look like in the United States? So, of course, when somebody declares that they would like to run for president, they have to go through their party, and they have to they don't technically have to, but the norm for the American elections is that they are going to go through a party. So we have 3, as Joe would say, major parties in America, even though we have 2 huge ones
and a little one.
2 big ones and a teeny weeny bitty one. But we're going to kind of skip the primaries here and just kind of go straight to, and assuming that the 2 or 3 major parties have picked their presidential nominee, and we're going to go straight from there. And so what does that look like? Okay. So first, you as a voter, you have to register to vote in the United States. So when the majority of states require voters to register about 2 to 4 weeks before an election, with cutoff dates varying between 30 and 15 days. There was a National Voters Registration Act of 1993 that required state governments to either provide uniform opt-in registration services through their driver's license registration centers, disability centers, schools, libraries, mail-in, or to allow election day voter registration. Now, that can be either or, where basically voters can register at the poll places immediately prior to voting. So as of August 2020, online voter registration is available in 40 states, including District of Columbia and also Guam. There's also automatic registration. As long as you interact with the state agency, you are automatically registered to vote. And these are, for example, applying for a driver's license will automatically register you to vote unless you opt out. And these states include Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, DC, Georgia, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and West Virginia. 17 states plus the District of Columbia allow people to have an election. So they call it EDR, Election Day Registration. So if obviously there's many different ways to register, there is one state, I can't remember off the top of my head, there's one state that you do not have to register to vote. If you remember that, if somebody wants to Google that for me, that would be great. But there is one state that you don't have to register to vote in order to vote in that state. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember seeing that. So registration's key. Now, what does your vote actually do? Okay, so your vote is actually a vote indirectly for the president and the vice president. Okay, people kind of know this. It's been in, the past, especially the past, few elections, people have been talking about the Electoral College. So essentially what you are doing when you vote is you're allocating electors based on you are voting for electors that are actually going to be voting for the president. So states are allocated electors based on the number of seats that they have in the House of Representatives and also the Senate. Washington, D.C. gets 3 electors, and other U.S. territories don't get any. So in total, there are 538 electors, including the 435 House of Representatives, 100 Senate seats, and 3 for Washington, D.C. When your ballot is cast, you are basically casting a ballot for an elector to pick our president. Maine and Nebraska are the only exceptions to that because they have something called a proportional system, but I won't go over that right this moment. But essentially, the Electoral College is the body that essentially picks our president. And they don't meet for another couple weeks, which is why we're probably not going to get a president for the next couple weeks because of the next thing I'm going to be talking about. Assuming most of the time, there is an occasional what they call faithless elector, and occasionally this elector will go against what the popular vote is for their state, but that is very rare that happens. Okay, so what actually ends a presidential election? Let's say the president loses the popular vote. Let's say the president does not get a majority of electoral votes. So what then would end a presidential election? Essentially, the norm around our democracy, and then basically one of the main safeguards of our American democracy, is the act of conceding. So it's been normal for almost 244 years, except for a couple times where it actually went to the House of Representatives, that the loser or the person who sees that they're going to be losing the Electoral College votes, so they're not going to get to that magic number of 270 electoral votes, the person concedes and allows basically the formality of the Electoral College to vote, the formality of allowing either elevating the current president if they got reelected, or helping the new president catch up, and then getting to Inauguration Day, and then having that process be completely peaceful and what we call a transfer of a peaceful transfer of power. So, but candidates don't have to concede. That's just the norm. That's what we've been doing for the past, 244 years, where the candidates that haven't gotten enough electoral votes basically concede and say, okay, you are going to be the next president. And basically what that does is it's going to tell all the tens of millions of people that voted for them that they're going to, that they can stand down and accept the outcome of the election. So conceding is a big part of our election process. Okay. Now, what happens if a president doesn't concede? So essentially the process, the Electoral College process, instead of it just being a formality, becomes like a really big thing, because they're going to that time. And I think that's kind of where we're headed towards, where the Electoral College is not going to be so much a formality this year. It's actually going to be like a real election where the candidates are going to get elected from the Electoral College instead of having this process of conceding. So how can a president or a incumbent or a potential challenger exploit this? Well, there's a couple ways that they can exploit it. The losers of the party could essentially say, the losing party could say, we don't agree with the electors. We don't agree with the count of the votes. They can sue the states. They can basically they can create such a mess in the Electoral College that they can't figure out who is winning and who has won. At that point, it goes to the House of Representatives. But the vote doesn't take place by delegates. It takes place by delegation. So in this year, technically, individual congresspeople don't really get to vote. It's done by the states. So theoretically, this year in the House of Representatives, there are more people that live in Democratic states, but there are more Republican states. So the Republicans technically have a majority, even though there are more Democratic delegates in the House of Representatives. So after saying all that, I know I took a long time. We have a big mess on our hands. And so I'm going to throw it to Joe and for comment and for all the stuff that he has.
I wish I had it already when you queued me up, because I had a video I wanted to play. So just to give everybody a background, I didn't vote for either of the big two. I voted for Jo Jorgensen. I'm well aware that she had no chance of winning. You guys don't have to get into that. But if you watch the show regularly, you're aware of that. I'm seeing some inconsistencies. I've been researching it all day. My blood pressure does not thank me for that, because researching it then created interactions on social media, and we all know how that goes. I had a lot of stuff primed and ready to go, and my computer at 8:42 said, no, we're doing an update. So I literally just signed back into my computer. Here's the deal. Trump is the butthead who cried wolf. So for the last 4 years, he's cried, they're out to get me, they're out to get me, they're out to get me. So now when I think that there's legitimate inconsistencies, now the video's playing that I'm trying to put. Stop. My computer's freaking out, guys. I'm sorry. So now that I'm actually seeing some inconsistencies with what I've looked over today, he might be onto something, but the problem is he's cried for 4 years, so no one wants to listen to him. So kids out there, don't give people a hard time unless there's really a problem. Lesson number one, because then they're not going to believe you when there is. So Wisconsin's been an issue. Michigan's been an issue. Pennsylvania's been an issue. Georgia's been an issue. I did focus a lot of the information that I got on Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, just because there's only so many hours in a day to run a business and scour the internet for as much unbiased information as you can find. And still to this point, I couldn't verify everything that I got my hands on. So I want to play this Biden video that I think I can do it. Let me do it. This Biden video I want to share, and I'm going to freaking share it.
Don't get his Facebook banned.
I might, but you know how that goes. All right, let's see. Let's see if we can make this work. Whoops. So, I'll let it play again.
The audio is really low on that, Joe.
Is it?
Extremely low. Can't hear anything. What? If you want to describe it, that would be even better.
I'll find it. You know what? We'll get there. While we're talking, and when we go forward, I'll get it downloaded and uploaded into the system so that it won't have to be the YouTube video screen. That was not in my intention of how to portray this information to you guys was through a YouTube screen. But so Biden's now that people are questioning if it was a slip of the tongue or if it was like a Freudian slip where he legitimately said something about voter fraud. They put together, what he said was, we put together the most extensive voter fraud organization in the history of the country. And this was a video that came out a week ago, within the past week, I guess, maybe a week or two. And, people were using it as Biden's not fit for office because he can't keep it together when he speaks. We've heard that argument before. He did say the largest voter fraud organization put together in American history, and now there's discrepancies in the voting. So a lot of things are in a whirlwind right now. I want to get to the bottom of it. Biden wins. Trump wins. But I'd like to know legitimately what's going on with these random votes that were showing up late at night. These different stories going around about tampering with the mail-in ballots, whether it's post offices. Project Veritas had a whistleblower. Project Veritas does lean right, so I know we'll keep that in mind. But they had a whistleblower. Patrick, it's my show, and I will do whatever I want. If you'd like to come on and join the discussion, be my guest. And it's not a conspiracy theory when there's legitimate information that's still up in the air as to whether or not it's happening. It's questionable. So I know everybody likes to jump on it's a conspiracy theory because Trump said it. No, we're not doing that game. We're not playing that game. Like I said, he was the butthead who cried wolf. And now I see a legitimate question, a legitimate issue. And
well, we kind of talked about this. Earlier in the day. Yeah. Go ahead, Tommy.
So I guess I'm going to be contrarian here and tell you that everything that's happening is an absolutely normal election. What you're seeing here is basically what Pennsylvania is doing is what Florida did for the previous 2 weeks. What you have to remember is that every state has its own election laws. So when you saw Florida go for Trump on the election night, if you noticed, there was a huge dump of mail-in ballots. In Florida, they counted all the mail-in ballots. All the things you're seeing Pennsylvania doing, all the things you're seeing Michigan doing, Florida did ahead of time because that's what their state law allows. Ohio, the same thing. President Trump, in his unhinged press conference today, pointed out that in Ohio, Biden had a big lead early on, and then Trump overtook him, which makes perfect sense because Ohio counted all of its mail-in ballots before time. All those ballots went into the system when their polls closed, and we know that 70% of Democrats voted by mail, and then we know about 70% of Republicans voted in person. So in Ohio, you had the in-person ballots being put in throughout the night, so the Biden lead shrunk. The exact opposite is happening in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, the state legislature doesn't allow anyone to open an absentee ballot until election night. Same thing in Wisconsin. That's the state law. So what happens is you had a huge in-person Trump arrival on election night in Pennsylvania. Now Pennsylvania has to count all of those mail-in ballots. And because we're waiting for them after the fact, we see them. It feels long. We're questioning why it's taking so long. And the reality is that if other states followed Florida and Ohio's way of doing it, we would have had this whole thing wrapped up Tuesday night, whoever the winner would have been. So what you're seeing is these inconsistencies. What I see is essentially the process happening in a way that is supposed to happen. That's all I see.
I don't see it that way as of right now. Let me ask you this: so you're concerned with Pennsylvania. Why aren't you concerned with Florida or Ohio? Oh no, I happen to be able to focus on a few of them throughout my day. Time.
No, but I guess the point I'm bringing up, Joe, is because those states did it before election night. We don't think about the process of the mail-in ballots. It just kind of was a magic number that showed up on election night. Go ahead.
No, that's good. Wisconsin was where I ended up focusing a lot of my attention because of the 3:34 a.m. jump in Biden votes. Now, I went and took my research further because, like I was telling you before the show, there was 2 million mail-in ballots requested in Wisconsin. 2 million mail-in ballots were requested. 1.9 million were returned. Of those 2 million, 41% were Republican, like 38%. I had infographics for all this, but my computer crashed on me, so now I'm screwed. 35 or 38% were Democrat. So the mail-in ballots requested were Republican heavy by a little bit. Now, when they were returned and counted at whatever 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, they came back all Biden.
So mine again. This is more of a discussion I saw with Pennsylvania, so it may not correlate exactly, but it sometimes goes into literally how they upload the ballots into the system. So I know a couple of people have been asking, well, I saw a district have 2,000 votes for Biden and none for Trump. How could that be possible? And the answer is that if you refresh the system, they literally are adding in the votes for one candidate, then the next candidate. So if you check it at the right moment, it looks like there were no votes in Flint County for Trump, where it might just be it had been loaded up. Now, again, I don't know the Wisconsin thing specifically, but it's one of those things because you're seeing it unfold. Again, in my opinion, we're seeing it unfold in person. So we question that we don't often see happen with the mail-in ballots, right? On top of that, you have far more coming in. Now, again, the numbers from Wisconsin, I haven't seen those numbers. I just feel like every state seems to be following the laws that those states have, right? And because essentially federal elections, I want to jump on with Jones with that one, you're essentially looking at 50 individual state elections for the chief executive, right? So that's why Florida could have one set of laws and Wisconsin has another set of laws. Some of the Midwest states, Colorado, Oregon, have used all mail-in voting for years. But what they do is they count them as they come in. What made it unique was the combination of having such a large amount being asked, and then state legislators not changing the laws to allow state officials to count ahead of time in those states. I don't know. That doesn't necessarily answer the thing that you found specifically, but when I see the numbers, like you hear these arguments of like, why are they're finding ballots everywhere? They're not finding ballots. They're just counting ballots they haven't been allowed to count until election day came in those states.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think when you have like millions upon millions of ballots to count, it's going to take a long time. And these people have been kind of working through the night. So, I mean, you wake up in the morning and you see, 100,000 here and, a few 100,000 here,
you're seeing it happen in real time, right? Like, again, I think Florida and Ohio are the best two. Ohio has one of the best run state election systems in the country. In Florida, after 2000, by the way, it made me very sad seeing some people on social media talk about, don't forget, our parents had to wait 6 weeks to find out who won the election. And I don't know how I feel about teenagers talking about like parents being that old, because I remember 2000, right? But it's playing out in real time. Right. And that to me is what throws us off. We're so used to in our society, beyond just instant gratification, we're used to having, the concession speech at 2 a.m. and you have the Obama walks out to the grand stage. Donald Trump comes out at 2 o'clock in the morning 4 years ago. We're not getting that because of what's going on with the mail-in ballots and the pandemic. The other thing I keep thinking about is vote issues go into courts, right? So, and I know, Joe, you mentioned is like keep an eye on the court cases. What I've been telling some of my students is ignore all the rhetoric. If you want to know if there's possible voter fraud, follow the court cases, right? If someone files a court case, they're saying, we believe there's enough evidence for the court to look at it, right? Someone tweeting out a picture or someone complaining doesn't work. And so far, I haven't seen anything really stick as far as widespread court cases happening. And they also tend to happen when all the votes are counted, right? When you think about Florida in 2000, it was after all the votes were counted that you started having challenging while the votes are being counted still is, I think, what makes some people concerned.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong about 2000, but if that did go to court and that did go to the Supreme Court.
Yes. And so what the Supreme Court ruled, so the basic thesis that the Supreme Court's been working on, from what I've seen, is that each state legislator sets election law, and then the state executive branch within the state brings about the election, right? So if the states are following state law, they will not be a legal challenge. What happened in Florida was you had federal courts basically demanding the state recount, and the Supreme Court said that's not your jurisdiction. The states decided. The state decided to stop it. So, for example, Pennsylvania, right? There's been a discussion of Pennsylvania law says that after 8 o'clock at night on election night, no new ballots should be accepted, right? That was the state legislator. There was a judge who ruled that because of the U.S. Postal Service slowdown, that deadline should be extended, right? There was a lawsuit brought by the GOP saying that that's a violation of Pennsylvania law. So what the Pennsylvania Secretary of State has said basically is that any ballots that come in after November 3rd are basically being, to use a word we use a lot, quarantined, are being put aside and not counted until the court decides, which is going to happen on Friday. So all the ballots being counted right now in Pennsylvania arrived before 8 p.m. on November 3rd. Now, if you don't believe it, that means the Secretary of State was basically lying in her press conference. So you could see a challenge there where the court could say those ballots that came in at that time after November 3rd are thrown out, but you can't throw out ballots that arrive before November 3rd because that's what the law says. North Carolina hasn't been called yet. One of the reasons why is North Carolina accepts ballots until November 14th, right? Any ballots is postmarked by Election Day. So if it gets lost in the mail and arrives by November 14th, by their state law, they will accept that. Same thing with Nevada, right? Georgia's got a different one. So we're looking at 50 different systems, which is kind of what our founding fathers intended anyway, right? 50 individual states working together in some kind of union. So in the past, we've never had a pandemic with large mail-in voting and a super close election, right? We've all lived through. I remember Clinton winning in 92. I remember 96. Bush in 04 was called night of. Obama was called by I think 10 o'clock at night in 2008. So it's new. It doesn't mean the system isn't working, at least from my perspective.
My mic was muted, but can I
see? You've been really
sorry.
quiet.
Yeah, I dominated there. Sorry about that, guys. I'm sorry.
Tom, it was perfect because it gave me a chance to upload all the stuff that I couldn't upload.
I was kind of figuring that, dude. That was my plan all along. I think what exactly I figured would happen.
Yes, nailed it. So I got the Biden video that has been circulating because you guys couldn't hear it before. You said, Okay, so I'm gonna play that real quick.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
He's like 75 years old. Yes, I know that. And
here's my thing. Here's my thing with that video. And I know it's just a 14-second video, but two things. Either he's too off to speak correctly, which is problematic if he's voted into being president. So there's that. Or if it was a Freudian slip and he wasn't supposed to say it, but it is the truth, then that's a problem. So
or it could be that a public servant talks a lot and everybody makes mistakes. And I've heard every president say things that are out of are taken in a way that they shouldn't be. Is he old? Yes. We're voting for two old white dudes, right? Somehow I don't know how 78 and 72 became like this chasm of 40 years. Trump is 72. I think politicians make flubs. He's famous for it. We talk about how he's been in public service for 47 years. And here's my last piece on this. I will point out, and I'm stealing this from social media. If the Democrats were stealing the election, why didn't they steal the Senate and let the GOP gain seats in the House?
Missed that last thing. I'm sorry, Tom.
So if the Democrats had this, they're going to steal. They were going to have a big voter fraud, right? But they're going down to the wire for the Senate, right? They're going to need two special elections in Georgia. Susan Collins ended up winning. They couldn't flip Montana. Right. And they lost House seats. So if the Democrats were going to steal the entire election, wouldn't Joe want to steal it for everybody and not just for himself?
That was actually a point that I heard as well. And it's a valid point. Patrick chimed in and said, do you say that about Trump's speaking patterns? And Matt and JC can verify that I make fun of Trump speaking constantly. So I am not
and tweeting because he's the worst at tweeting.
He's the worst. He's the worst. Well, I am by no means trying to support necessarily Trump. I'm trying to take in all of the information and analyze it the best possible way. Trump speaks and he makes my brain hurt.
Listen, I would, and Jonesy's known me for a while and he knows I'm no fan of him. But I'll tell you right now, if you take Trump's phone away, right? If you take his phone away, he probably wins re-election. Take away Twitter and take away the phone, and he wins.
But we've said that. We've totally said that as well.
on this show, we've said it a bunch of times. His approval rating would have been way higher, minus a couple tens of thousands of tweets, tens of thousands of tweets, and just like anything else, the knee-jerk reaction approach to everything these days, he epitomizes, and it pisses me off because the knee-jerk reaction to anything pisses me off. So, I mean, whenever someone's like, I've heard 3 seconds of information and now I know everything and I have a full opinion for you. Like, I don't like when anybody does that, let alone the leader of the free world. So, Patrick, to answer your question, I bust Trump's chops too. So this, with Biden saying that slip, I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring to the table here, given the current climate.
Sure.
And I will bring up the conspiracy theory stuff, and maybe we can debunk it. Maybe not. Who knows? But so this is when I was looking into Wisconsin. This is what I was talking about before, and now I actually can give you guys a graphic here. So I know Tom had said something about the votes being counted for a certain mail-in ballot at a certain time, and then another one might catch up later. This was information charted by 538 provided by ABC News. So I looked at this. This seems to be a legit graph as to how the numbers came in Wisconsin. I did come across a video of a woman that was working at the location where they were counting, and she said it was very strange that how it went down towards the end of the night, how a van of mail-in votes, an unmarked van and a Ferrari is actually what she said. So like I said, that's an internet video. I thought that was very specific to be made up. But hey, everything could be made up. If it's on the internet, it must be true. But she was very specific about an unmarked black van and a Ferrari pulled up and happened to have 100,000 and change mail-in votes, and they were all Biden's. So then that's where this conversation piece came up for me. So if you look at this chart here, the jump around 3 or 4 a.m. Puts Biden past Trump. And I know you mentioned Ohio, Tom, so I'm going to try to take all that into account. But then you don't see the mail-in jump for the next infographic I have. And I'm sorry I'm blocking everybody's face because this is the info I was saying, and it's probably too small for me to read. But so 43% of the mail-in ballots requested of the 2 million were Republican, 1.9 were returned, 38% were Democrat. And people were saying, the Democrats were voting more mail-in. And that could explain this jump in the numbers. So when I looked in, someone definitely has a video on JC. You're not kidding. It's the sound's bleeding through. So it doesn't really add up in the fact that it's going to be all Biden mail-ins at that point in that argument. So
was that you put? Could you put that graphic up one more time? The mail-in versus the request one, the one on request, not yet. So requested versus returned, right? So I mean, one philosophy could be that if you're a Trump supporter and you get a constant drum of hearing how mail-in votes won't be counted, how they'll be fraudulent, how you have to show up at the polls, you could request a ballot and not use it and then end up going to the polls anyway, right? So if, let's say I request that mail-in ballot, and again, I'm just theorizing here, right? I request a mail-in ballot, but now I've been getting second thoughts about should I mail it in or not. You could still go to the polls in Wisconsin and vote. You're not breaking any law. So in other words, you're not checked off for voting until that mail-in ballot comes back. So it could be something as simple as them deciding that. And I'm sitting here like, so mail-in and early in-person ballots returned. So there's also, I would say, this chart, they're giving you mail-in ballot requests at the top. I don't know if early mail-in person ballots returned are mail-in ballots.
Yeah, there needs to be more
It's
information for
not,
sure.
yeah, like it's a bad. I'm sorry. I'm thinking like a teacher. I can't help myself.
No, it's
But
okay.
that's a bad
want-
chart. It's a bad chart, right? Like, why would you give one bar with one set of data and then the other bar add another set of data to it? Which
Speak to
somebody.
talk to
No,
NBC
I know. It
News.
doesn't make sense. Yeah. What I thought about the 538 was actually a really kind of good representation of those jumps when the mail-in ballots come in, and I really think, I really think that Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan really did the nation a disservice by not allowing the state election officials to model the Florida behavior, right? Because Florida comes in, was like, hey, it's Trump. He got the Cubans to vote for him. We're perfectly fine. We call it at 8 o'clock and we move on, right? Ohio got called a little later, but because these few states, and I mean, to get a little granular, you had GOP legislators not allowing the change. You could argue to slow the process down. You could argue to make it appear illegitimate when I get into conspiracy theories, right? If I wanted it to look like Trump has a big lead and now here come all these secret Biden ballots, I have us counted in the light of day versus counting it back, beforehand.
4 in the morning.
Yeah, but again, I don't know. But here's a great thing: I have no idea how Florida counted. Right? I mean, for all we know, we could have had a bunch of black vans showing up down in Miami, Florida, with Trump.
Right.
With Trump.
I'm not saying that's not possible.
And that's
I'm
the thing.
Investigating all of the things that are happening.
What I'm saying is that because it was not in our view, right? Because it happened before the election night, we don't think about it, right? It's just a number on the screen that showed up that we're all used to, right? The way Pennsylvania's doing it and Georgia's doing it is something new. Or I wouldn't say new. It's like Georgia's got huge military. They're still going to count military ballots. This is how military ballots have been counted for years.
Yeah, they have many military bases down there.
But there's so many more ballots on top of that. It now feels like this new and weird system. Which,
so Tom,
by the way,
can you come on in like a year from now when we finally find out?
Well, listen, and this is to get to Jonesy. To get to Jonesy's point, I think the system's working. So first of all, Jonesy and his doom and gloom about the Electoral College. Let's get all the states in, right? Because there's a scenario here where if Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada go Biden, no amount of lawsuits are going to stop that from happening, right? I think the faithless electors get in when it's 1 or 2 votes, right? That's what you start seeing. So let's say Arizona. See if I got all my bingo cards lined up here, right? Let's say Georgia, Arizona stick with Trump, and Biden gets Nevada and Pennsylvania. I don't know. There's a couple of ways where it becomes like a 1 or 2 vote difference, and that's where the Electoral College could come into play. Right now, it's. If you want to get really funky,
did we expect anything less than 2020? By the way,
So full disclosure, I teach AP government at the high school I work at, and I always have my U.S. Constitution with me at all times. And if you really want to get freaked out, right? Theoretically, Article 2 says that state legislators decide who the electors are, right? So in theory, Jonesy, right? If you want to get really crazy, you could have. Let's take Wisconsin, Joe, right? Let's make up a story, right? So let's say this all turns out to be true, and the Wisconsin state legislator, which is Republican, says, you know what? The vote's been invalidated. We're picking the electors for our state, right? We're not going to use the vote of the people.
That's wild that can even happen, by the way.
Because according to the Constitution, it's just state legislators get to decide who's going to be sent as Electoral College, right? That's all it says, right? So there's this point where we have to think about who's being sent and how they're being sent there. For the most part, the people going to be in Electoral College are your partisan. I think Hillary Clinton is one of the New York electors.
Yeah.
Right? We did talk about that.
And I'm sure Andrew Cuomo was one too.
I was like, great.
Yeah, because it's meant to be ceremonial. But don't forget, in 2016, there was talk on the Democrat side about, will the Republicans do the right thing and vote for the pop? No, of course not. They're partisans. You're not going to put someone in the Electoral College that's not going to vote for their guy. Now, if it's a big, I think
which I think the biggest part of the duopoly here is really.
Listen, I've been researching. I'm a big fan. I've been telling my kids this of the French system. I think the French election. There's not many things great about the French outside their food, but like their election system for president is anyone runs. It's anyone runs for president, and then if no one gets more than X% of the vote, the top two people have a runoff. Think about what that might have looked like in 2020. You could have had Bernie going all the way, right? And maybe they split the vote, and suddenly now Bernie could hold more, hold Biden's feet to the fire more to get his 20% in. Or think about, let's say, a Marco Rubio or a Kasich on the Republican Party saying, you know what, I'm going to throw my hat in and kind of force the issue. It eliminates this duopoly because, Joe, you hit the nail on the head, right? Our founding fathers never expected political parties. They never expected just two of them to be dominating the whole system.
And we've talked about it before, but it drives the corruption further because it's a power struggle between two. And as I know now, I know you're a proud libertarian, knowing who you vote for. You know, the one thing both parties could agree upon is to make sure they stay the only two parties. Exactly.
Right. That's the one thing they will make sure that they are the only two parties that are there. It's one of the genius parts. I can't remember saying this, but it's one of the genius parts of Trump. Remember, Trump flirted with a run back in 2000, 2004 on the Reform Party and kind of realized that there wasn't enough juice there to make it happen. So he ran for the Republican Party, got the nomination, and in 4 years has fundamentally changed what it means to be a Republican. Remember when Republican meant like social conservatism, fiscal conservatism?
Yep.
There we go. Pat.
I just wanted to put that up so you got a little.
I appreciate that
positive reinforcement.
Have him fact check me if I'm off on anything, Pat. Please, because if I'm off, let me know.
For those that's listening that aren't seeing it, Patrick commented, "I want to observe Tom's class. I teach at U.S. History and AP Economics." So
that is a humbling thing to say. Thank you, Pat.
I thought you'd want to see that. So go ahead.
Yeah. So no, but it's this idea of he's changed what it means to be a Republican, which fascinates me. Right? When you think about it, he came in understanding that he couldn't start a third party, so I'm just going to change one of the two parties. And people are like, do you remember 2016? I remember watching this. And he'll be humbled by The Office, right? The party will bend his will, and he'll really just become a regular Republican. No, he did not. And what's amazing is that he did the opposite, right? He took the party and shaped it into what he wanted it to be. And in 4 years, and that's the identity crisis. I don't know if anyone watched the press conference, but I'm sure there's a lot of elected Republicans at the end of the press conference kind of wondering, like, is this where, like are we goose? Are we pulling the eject button on the airplane? Because what do you do with that? What do you do for Mitch McConnell if the president of the United States stands up there and says that, I win if all the legally votes are counted and that the Democrats are stealing the election? What do you do with that?
It is tough because there is evidence. All right, you were saying Bernie Sanders before, right?
Yeah.
So to watch this is something that someone pointed out to me, and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So to watch Bernie Sanders get screwed twice by his own party when it comes to the DNC in 2016 and 2020, twice, very blatantly that he
except he's technically an independent and not part of the Democratic Party.
Where I'm going with this.
But I know where you're going with this. I know where you're going with this. I just got to be honest.
Is to say we watched them kind of screw him out of his nomination twice. Who's to say that they're incapable? Because a lot of people are just dismissing the whole concept of any tampering or any fraud. So it's tough for me as someone who's doesn't have a horse in the race, I guess you could say, to look at that and go, well, how can you say that the Democrats wouldn't cheat? So if they maybe not illegally cheating, but I
was going to say, now this is where I sound like a politician, right? Define what you mean by cheating, right? Super delegates aren't cheating; they're in the rules.
Working the system is what I'm saying.
The system, and I know you have the whole WikiLeaks dump, which was where the emails come out, and it was clear they were fighting against it. Again, I'm not a Democratic operative, but if I'm in the Democratic Party, I'm saying to myself, do I want the institutional candidate or I want the guy who's throwing bombs on the outside? Of course, they're going to work to maintain, our own power base. I think Bernie is a fascinating case because he does. I'd argue. And now I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'd argue you need a third party, but it's a third party that kind of finds the middle of both, right? You're looking at both political parties running towards the fringes, right? Let's not make a mistake. If Joe Biden wins, he's going to be fighting with his far left as much as he's going to be fighting with the Republicans, right?
Mhm.
Because how do we define what this win is, right? This isn't a landslide for Trump. So if I'm AOC, right? If I'm AOC, I'm going, hey, you know what? We tried this centrist candidate. We barely won. What people really want is more left policies, right?
Oh, she's the progressives are definitely going to pull that card out.
But if I'm Joe Biden, I'm going to say, hey, but I won as a centrist, and we have the Lincoln Project. We have other moderate Republicans who might have voted for me, right? About 8% of Trump votes went to Biden, and about 14% of independents went to Biden. So Biden's going to say, listen, if we go far left, we're going to lose that piece, right? And the answer is that we probably need a third party, right? A third party is going to be able to kind of find, hey, you want to go
ever.
Well, no, but
ever.
Because listen,
I told you he'd be dynamic.
What you're saying is that, like, listen, maybe people want a far left party. Maybe people want more of a democratic socialism. That's great. I know I don't want Trumpism. I also know I kind of don't want socialism. But like,
why? It works so well.
Well, listen. Hey, you know what? If I shouldn't say I want socialism. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy my Social Security checks when they come in, right, one day. And let's not forget, when FDR ran on that, he was called socialist for having Social Security. But I get your point, right? What we have, and Jones, you know I'm going to go here, right, with this one, right?
Yeah.
Like, we have a country that is so geographically diverse. And I read a book over the summer, American Nations, that I had Jonesy read, and I know he's mentioned it. Like, I'm looking at
tried to get me to read it every single day for the last.
I'm telling you, as someone who's, and Patrick, if you're listening to APUS, American Nations, Colin Woodard, check it out, right?
I'll put the info up.
It breaks the country down in a way that you could see we really are these different nations, right? The Northeast versus South versus the Midwest. One of our required documents in classes is this we know the Federalist Papers, right? We know Hamilton and the musical, and he writes the Federalist Papers. There are a bunch of anti-Federalist papers written, and one of them, called Brutus I, talks about, this is 1787. Guys, we're going to have 3 million people in this new nation. It's way too big for it to work. 3 million people, right? I think if they looked at it now, they'd be like, you're insane trying to make this whole republic work, right? Mm-hmm. But to go back to the point, is we have these two parties, right? If you're a Republican in Montana, you have to somehow be connected to a Republican in Iowa and a Republican in Florida who might be a Cuban Hispanic, right? Or the Democrat in New York City who might find solace with other people in New York City. But what about the Democrat who's living out in Washington, the West Coast of Washington? They have totally different needs and views, right? And to try to get us all to fit into one big pot, you get boiled down to like the most basic things, and then you get stuck with it, right? But the electoral map's going to prove this out, because if you look, if Biden grabs Pennsylvania, Virginia up to Maine is all Democratic, right? If he grabs Nevada and Arizona, Washington, California, Nevada, Utah's got the Mormons, so that they're a different breed, right? But you're going to have essentially a Democratic West Coast, East Coast, and the Great Lakes region, right? Those are three different regions, and then everybody else is going to be red. How do we define that as a nation? I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, it's tough. Right. It's tough.
Yeah.
We're and of course, I start talking, I'm coughing. We also, I just lost my train of thought. I had such good.
I talk too much. I'm sorry.
No, today's not my night. Everything's just going wrong for me tonight. What I was gonna say is, you're making a valid point about we have and Jones explained this to me before. The little nations we're made up of little nations. Yep. Now I feel like when you add like this technology age, and now we have this social media, and we've created further division. Yeah. Because of misinformation. That's why I was spending so much time trying to check the information I was going to bring to the show, because I don't want to put up BS.
Sure.
I mean, who knows if what's what at this point? But I was trying to bring something to the table to just validate some of the back and forth here. But I think the social media and the way people interact nowadays is creating even more division. So now we're even more split, and we have these little pockets of nation or thought ideologies. I don't know if the future is going to hold any positives in this department. I think we're going to have more problems than we're going to have solutions going forward.
No, it's social media is the. I mean, it was touted as the next great thing. You remember when you had the Arab Spring, right? And Facebook is helping bring down Egyptian dictators, and they're helping to reshape the Middle East. And it was going to bring people together. We're going to share our photos. I could talk to grandma across the country. But it has become. Listen, if everyone has a YouTube channel, everybody can get a Twitter feed. What's news, right? If everybody can have everybody's got.
Anybody can have
exactly. We have a podcast. Look at us having a podcast.
Everybody can have a podcast.
You put a camera in the back of the phone, and now everybody's a reporter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you feel like there's a bias in the mainstream media, now I can go find the echo chamber. I talk to my kids all the time about the echo chamber, right? I tell them, hey, listen, if you only watch Fox News, you're going to think that only Fox News is real. Take an hour and watch Fox News, then go watch an hour of MSNBC and watch an hour of CNN, and then get a sense of where you are, right?
Or don't watch any of those.
But this is the thing, Joe, right? But then where do you go? This is the rise of like the YouTube channel, right? Because suddenly, if I have a YouTube channel, I got 200,000, and people listen. People making bank on this. Look at Joe Rogan, right? Look at Bill Simmons, right? You could make serious money off of this, but you also could seriously. There's no filter. There's no middleman, right? There's no Walter Cronkite, right? I have a freshman daughter, and she's on TikTok and everything. And
Me too. How's your life going right now? I have one of those too. It's
awesome.
It's
so much fun.
right?
Fantastic. But one of the things that we don't know, and you know this, Joe, is like we don't know what they're watching, right? I have a son. I got my son. He's 8. He's watching YouTube videos, and I know that there are people who mess with the algorithm to get like essentially propaganda to pop up on his like Pokemon Go pages, right? So it's everywhere, and as parents, it's crazy. But then as wanting to be educated adults, where do you go? Like you said, right? Where do you go to get information?
It's been oversaturated with. We're oversaturated with information now, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's correct information, and we are in a whirlwind of BS.
And not only that, it's people who intentionally create the BS because they know it's going to sell, right? Mm-hmm. Now, to go off the beaten path just slightly, my other outside of politics, my other passion is Star Wars and Marvel.
Me and you are gonna get along so well, bro.
So when you remember Last Jedi? Remember when Last Jedi came out, right?
Yeah, everybody hated it. Everybody loved it. Yeah,
exactly. So, but what people figured out in the Star Wars Twitter and YouTube verse is if you put up a negative Last Jedi, just a title on YouTube, you're gonna get all sorts of hits and ads and make money. So it became this self-perpetuating cycle of how bad Last Jedi was and creating, which, I mean, listen, Bryan Johnson, great movie, has his flaws, don't really like the way they characterize Luke, but I'm not going to tell you it was terrible, right? I'll fight you if you tell me that the Last Skywalker was a better movie, because that was an abomination. But it's that echo chamber, right? And I'm making money off of it, which is not, I don't know what Mark Zuckerberg expected, but I don't know if it was this.
JC, would you like to join us this evening?
Sorry. Yeah, JC, I apologize. I've been talking way too much here.
You're
JC
muted.
He doesn't have a mic? Muted? Nope, doesn't want to. There he is.
No,
you with us, buddy?
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm with you.
I want to hear your thoughts on some of this, man. We're 56 minutes in. I've barely heard you talk. Nope.
Y'all are good.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
Well, the one thing I did want to bring up, I just want to circle back to Colin Woodward, because I was really, Tommy recommended this book, and I was really inspired by it. I wanted to tell everyone who would listen, and Joe was like one of the only people that would listen to me. But I'm going to bring up Colin Woodward's map of the American nations, and you're going to see some big correlations between that and the Electoral College.
There it is, man. Look at that.
So if you take a look, the Northeast up there in Yankeedom, mostly blue. Midlands, that would include Pennsylvania and Ohio and all of those kind of states we're talking about.
You can't count New France, though, because they gave up.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well,
I had to make a France joke.
So you got Tidewater, which is like Virginia gentlemen, and you got down in the deep South, the Dixie block down there. And, you kind of take a look at this and, you can see where the clusters of people who have similar ideas are. And it's no wonder kind of like where people are voting and how people are voting. And he's basically taken this, and I think he wrote the book. When did he write the book? 2010, 2011, I believe.
Yep.
Even before Donald Trump even decided to run or even thought about running, when, that famous Obama correspondence dinner where he just ripped Trump the whole time. And that's when he pretty much decided he was going to run. I think he pretty much finished the book before any of that stuff happened. So if you kind of think about it, Colin Woodard he really predicted a lot of the stuff that's going on right now.
Jones, you look at Ohio. Look at where the battleground states are, right? They're a mix. They're a mix of different ones, right? It's right there, right?
Right. So Ohio is about right here, and it's gonna include 3 different nations. Little part of Yankeedom, definitely part of the Midlands, and also Greater Appalachia. So you got a split of 3 different groups of people that all have different ideas. No wonder they're swing states. Take a look at Pennsylvania right over here. No wonder they're a swing state. It's not brain surgery to take a look at this. They all have different ideas, and so you have to be able to pander to one group of people or the other in order to get those votes.
Yeah, it really is a great point, and you see it. You see it changing as you go too, in terms of you're looking at North Carolina with Tidewater and Virginia. Virginia right now, you're dealing with that kind of expansion down of Yankeedom and the kind of the democratic ideals that are there. But even something like Arizona, New Mexico with El Norte and the Far West, that kind of Far West individualism along with the Hispanic populations that are there. It's a great book. It is absolutely a great book.
Yeah,
Jones,
so if you get a chance to really dive into it, it's highly recommended. It's definitely something that can really inspire you, and it can also as I was reading the pages, I was like, oh my God, no wonder we're so screwed up, or no wonder all this stuff is happening around us, because it's so easy to think, us being in the Northeast, JC being out in the West Coast, it's so easy for us to think the way we do because we're surrounded by like-minded people, when out in the Midwest and out in the South and all of those different people think totally different from us. And to understand that is to understand where we are and why, and where we are and why what's happening now is relevant to where all those nations are.
Yep. And Joe, just so you know, if the regional one doesn't do it for you, his other book is called American Character. And this one actually talks about the individual liberty and the common good, and the struggle. He goes through the U.S. history of how we struggle between individual liberty, which is huge. Again, you saying you're a libertarian, and what point do you go to the common good? At what point do you give up the individual liberty because there's a greater common good? And he goes through our history of how it swung back and forth, about how you had the 1800s, lots of individual liberty, the rise of FDR and the kind of New Deal, and this idea of common good, and then the kind of retreading back into Reagan's time. So if regions don't hit you, maybe liberty might.
I'm open to all things. Like I'll absorb and I'll take in everything. So I'm not the kind of person.
I feel like his interest, because he does a little summary of American nations in there.
He's had my interest in this for a while. It's just it's so much easier to binge watch a show. It takes way less thought these days to sit down and take my medicine and watch something that's mindless.
Especially in this day and age, right? Like, do I really want to?
Like, after we're done here, I'm deciding what my next binge show is, because I finished Black Sails the other day, which is really cool if your history, social stuff. Black Sails was a cool show.
Ready for this? This, I swear to God, Woodard's first book was on the Republic of Pirates, about the Caribbean pirates and how they built a mini republic down there. It's his first book. It's called The Republic of Pirates: The True Inspiring Story of the Caribbean Pirates, the Man Who Brought Them Down.
Wow,
so this
you
guy
got that all queued up. Look at you.
I got 2 screens. I got 2 screens thanks to where I work. They gave me 2 screens, so I'm ready to go.
So if anybody wants a little positivity, if you want to check out Black Sails, they put what they did with the writing is it's 4 seasons long on Stars. They took the fictional pirates, like the Long John Silvers, but then the Anne Bonnies and the Calico Jacks and the Charles Vane. I think some of those were real pirates, and they integrated the stories of the fictional pirates with the non-fictional. And obviously, it's not it's historical fiction, but it lean more on the fiction, obviously. But it was cool to see them integrate these characters of fiction and non-fiction into a pretty cohesive story. And I mean, I'm still itching from Game of Thrones not being around anymore, so I needed some sort of period piece.
We could have the conversation we could have on Game of Thrones. Are you a last season defender, or do you just acknowledge it was terrible?
I think it should have been longer. I'm not necessarily a defender of it. I enjoyed the whole work as a whole from start to finish. It had its ups and downs, obviously. Seasons 4, 5, and 6, I think, were the real heart of the show, when it was when they had material to work, when they had books to work off of, and then when they didn't, they just fell flat in the face. I mean, I feel like we're all currently Jon Snow standing in front of the Battle of the Bastards with one sword, just all looking down these horses like, whoa,
great episode. Great episode. I thoroughly. That's another.
My favorite episode of television in history. My favorite episode of television in history is Battle of the Bastards. I'd watch it right now again, and I've probably watched it 30 or 40 times. Listen,
it's a show that I enjoyed. I had read the books first, and it was just kind of fun to watch other people discover it as it happened. And then be like, they're actually pulling this off, and then slowly have the horror of realizing they're going to pass him, and they have no clue what they're going to do next.
Yeah. Well, how about the horror of knowing the Red Wedding? I didn't read the books, but I knew that was fun. And I knew it was coming. Someone told me. Someone warned me.
Oh, that's
but they didn't tell me how bad. Something really bad's about to happen at the end of the season. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
The joy of watching with my brother, my wife, knowing what's coming and having them not have a clue and watching it unfold, it was awesome. Because again, I had read the books. I remember reading the book and being, I know we're off script here, Jonesy, but
you're all good.
I have a distinct moment of reading the book and doing one of these, and I did it in the first book where you read it and you go, no, he's the hero, right? No, that's not how it's supposed to work. I did the same thing in book 1, where you get, I don't want to spoil it for people, but you get to the moment in the first season where you're like, when is someone going to save this guy?
Yes, I know.
Okay. So I hear you. It was, it's amazing to pull it off. Minor miracle.
I forgot how we Patrick is agreeing. Amazing episode, saying that it's one of the best television. You know what? We had to bring it into something fun at the end here. We had to
absolutely
throw a little positivity back in. But go ahead.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
So do you still, after seeing everything happen, because I know my answer to this, do you still have faith in the process and the people of this country, considering what we were told was going to happen? People prepping, we're going to have violent people boarding up. I see this, the fact that I could be sitting here with you at 10 o'clock at night having a conversation and not be worried inspires me that as a nation, we still get it. Am I crazy?
I think it's early for making that declaration.
Fair.
I would say wait for the next week or two when things start going a more definitive way. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, Biden won," and it's done when he got to 240 electoral, and then you were explaining before, that's not that simple. It's just not that easy. It's not cut and dry. Just because he's closer right now doesn't mean he won. This is the closest thing we've ever witnessed at this point, from what I can tell. And then the questions of cheating and fraud are coming up because they are legitimate issues in such a close race. I mean, for us to say this is so close that anybody could have cheated and either side. Like I was saying to them before, okay, so maybe the Democrats cheated with the voter fraud, but then maybe when they go in and the Republicans are getting their lawyers in here, they're going to be cheating when they. I'm like at the point where I'm like, are we just going to have a president that was had the best cheaters on his team? I mean,
The best legal team. No.
I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear where you're coming from.
I feel like also, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of conjecture out there, and and we kind of talked about this via text, Joe, but I don't think we're going to find much truth, hardcore evidence, truth until it goes to court. And I truly believe that it is going to go to court, because I don't think that Trump is going to let this go. Biden, if it ends up that Biden is leading, after they count everything and everything's settled and all the states are certified and Trump won, I believe that Biden is going to concede. After everything's certified and they find that Biden won, I don't think Trump is going to concede. I think he's going to sue everyone and everything until he tries to get his way, until basically the Supreme Court says, please stop, because you're not going to win this. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's the way it's going to play out.
Another reason to take my medicine and watch TV shows.
No, listen, but again, I guess and keep this in your back pocket. If people really start getting angry and start fighting back as Trumpites, again, I'll go back to the document that the whole country is built on. It says January 20th at 12 o'clock, his term is over, right? The president serves a 4-year term. His 4th-year term is over. So if we're gonna stand on all our amendments, we're gonna talk about the importance of the Constitution. If there's no elector, Nancy Pelosi becomes president, right? If we can't figure out the election, his term is over.
Figure it out, guys. Figure it out.
But that's
But I also said that via WhatsApp. I was like, can you imagine if they can't figure it out by January 20th?
It doesn't
and
matter.
Nancy Pelosi's president for a little bit?
But Jonesy, in a way, that's what keeps coming back to us, right? Like, we hear all the time with the Constitution, your Second Amendment, your Fourth Amendment, your First Amendment, right? All these things. Well, you got to embrace everything in the Constitution, right? And yeah, he's done. That's his term, right? And if we don't follow those ideas, and it's a flimsy idea, right? The whole country's held together by a piece of paper and our belief in that piece of paper, right? But all I keep hearing from my Trump supporting friends is how important the Constitution is. And all I keep hearing from my Democratic friends is how important the Constitution is, right? They like to pick and choose which amendment they think is important, right? But
it's like religious people with the Bible. They pick and choose when they want to follow the rules.
So I blew. So Jones, you like this? I got a video clip from Anton Scalia, right? Notorious conservative Judge Anton Scalia, and I played it for my students who are very liberal. And he talked about the greatness of the Constitution being in the articles and how you need a government with checks and balances, because your Bill of Rights don't matter if you don't have a government that's going to support them. And his whole argument was that that's why you have state governments. That's why you have gridlock. That's why there's a House and a Senate, right? It was phenomenal. I stopped it and I asked my kids, I go, so any reactions? And my most liberal student was like, Mr. Andriello, I don't know how you did it, but like, you made me agree with Anton Scalia, because what he was saying was it was a pretty straightforward. And I guess that's what I'm trying to buy into here, is that in the end, the system will work itself out. The system will work. People are counting ballots. The governor of Georgia is a Republican, and he's not stopping anything because he believes in the system. The people who work, maybe not the politicians, Joe, right? But I do believe that the people who work in government, the people who actually make the government function, in bureaucracy, if you will, I think they do value their job, and a strong bureaucracy kind of holds us all together, right? I think we've seen 4 years of that. Again, you want another book recommendation? The Fifth Risk. It's a really good book about the bureaucracy of Washington, D.C. and how the good they do. But the idea of a good foundational government beyond the politicians is what keeps us running, right? Or as my buddy in the Army says, it's really just the military. Like he would tell me all the time, like, listen, he's like, don't worry about it. It's all going to be fine. Like, there's so many institutional checks that we don't have to worry about it, which sounds good to hear, but
Yeah, I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
great, but
Until we've never challenged it, right? Never had as Jonesy said, we never had a president who's decided I'm not going to concede, which is,
Yeah.
I mean,
2020, man.
yeah, 2020 during
Yeah,
a
really.
pandemic. Seriously.
Yeah.
So I think I think we'll let Tommy have the last word there, because that was very inspiring.
That was the last word, then, right?
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me come on.
Unless
This is
you have
fun.
anything else you want to add, I think
No,
we're running
no,
we're running long.
No, I thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah, well,
I would love
you're-
to have you back for the a fanboy episode. Maybe we'll do like Marvel, Game of Thrones, Star Wars.
Listen, I will be here. I will be here with bells on. I do a pop culture class, and I could talk to you all day about Marvel and the business side of Marvel and why I love the MCU. So you tell
I love the MCU too.
Yeah. You tell me.
become best friends.
You let me know. You give me the date, and I will be here. I can talk all day on
I
it.
loved. I feel like we've met before.
I'm sure we have. We probably played cards at some point.
Yeah. I think that's what happened. But I liked your approach, and I liked how we all listened to each other and had an adult conversation, whether we
Isn't it
agreed
amazing what
100% or
happens?
not. That's the point.
Isn't it amazing, the little things? All right.
It's the reason why we started this podcast, to actually have a conversation instead of just barking at each other on social media.
Yeah, I did that a lot today, and I don't think I'm going to look on Facebook again the rest of the night. I really
Probably a good idea.
I was spent before I close this out here. Guys, take a freaking break, man. Take a break. Go watch a show. Read American Nations. Do something else. Because I'm falling into the trap myself. It's not healthy. It's not. You gotta turn off for a little while and stop engaging. And I've even caught myself falling on and saying and falling into the same traps that I see other people that I'm like, I can't believe you said that, or I can't believe you shared that. We're all guilty of it at some point where we go too far and realize, whoops, probably should have fact checked that, or maybe my argument isn't valid, or that's a good point, but it's so combative right now that it's not even like I was trying to provide that information I shared earlier with other people, and they were just like, wear your tinfoil hat, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Jesus freaking Christ, man. I'm just trying to analyze what's in front of me.
Conversation. Spark a conversation with me.
Trying to analyze what's in front of me, and calling me names isn't necessarily where we should go with this.
That's right, man. Conversations solve money problems. All right. Well, guys, thank you again for having me on. I
Tom,
really
for
appreciate
coming.
it. Okay.
We really appreciate you stopping in.
Absolutely.
Make sure you guys check us out mostly every Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go check us out. Subscribe on Linktree / the TMI podcast, to Facebook, to Instagram, to Twitter, to our iTunes, to our Spotify. We have to catch up on a couple of those, Jonesy, on Spotify and the podcast stuff. So you guys can listen in the car sometimes if we got some episodes you might be interested in. If you can't tune in live, make sure you tune in live, though, because we have the ability for you to join the discussion. We got the comment section for you guys to chime in. They come in live. Patrick's saying we had a good episode, and he's going to go watch the most recent episode of Fargo instead of the news tonight, and I thoroughly agree with that decision. Thanks again, guys. Matt, you want to? I have control now. Is it okay if I?
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead.
We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Bye.